Day 4 of no vaping. I just woke up. I actually slept on the couch. I have felt like I've wanted to die the past week and a half. This is really hard. I feel like my brain is not in my body. Like nothing feels real. I can't focus on anything. Any work task I try to do is like feels impossible. Oh, this is so hard. I just want to vape again so that my brain can go back to normal. Whoever said that the most difficult part of quitting vaping was like the first 3 days or the first week is a fucking liar, and I want my money back. Every day I feel more of a pull and tug to relapse. I was addicted to vaping, and my addiction to vaping was quite literally taking over my life. And I know that sounds dramatic, but stay tuned. I'll give you all the deets. Over the past 4 years, I was vaping hundreds of times every single day, but I was successfully able to quit. And I want to share my story for anyone else out there who is struggling with a vaping addiction and give you all of my tips and tricks that I implemented to quit in order to help you on your journey of quitting vaping as well. Oh, I'm gonna be honest, guys. I do not want to make this video. Quite frankly, this is very embarrassing for me to talk about. This is something that I have just kept hidden away from everyone because I was so ashamed of it, and this is something that I am quite vulnerable about, so I would just request that you be kind to me in the comment section. And as much as I am tempted to just sweep this under the rug and never talk about it again, I really do want to share my story in the hopes of helping anyone who is also struggling with a vaping addiction, because let me tell you, I have watched hundreds of videos of how to quit vaping and nothing ever worked, so I want to give you guys my toolkit of what was able to really help make a difference in my own journey. And yeah, I really don't want to talk about this, but if it helps even one person quit vaping out there, then it's worth it. All right, let's get into my story of why the heck I even started vaping to begin with. So I started vaping off and on back in 2020, but I feel like it really got its claws in me in 2021. I'll be honest, it started as something like really casual. I would just do when I was drinking because it was kind of nice to feel like that rush when I was drinking. But it was always something that was really casual. I never got hooked on it until I made the connection between work, productivity, and vaping. I started noticing that if I vaped while I worked, I was way more productive, way more efficient, way more concentrated, and that was really the beginning of the end. I haven't talked about this on my channel, but I, Hiram, have severe ADHD. And I'm not talking about your little cutesy, oh my god, I'm so random, so silly type of ADHD. No, girl, I am like the poster child of ADHD. I've had friends say I thought I had ADHD until I saw you in your day-to-day life and I realized I don't have ADHD. It is a severe problem that inhabits every single aspect of my life, and I feel like every day is a battle of trying to not let my ADHD destroy my life. A lot of my depression and anxiety is tied to my ADHD. My work productivity is absolutely horrendous. It negatively impacts friendships, relationships. I forget literally everything. Like, it is truly awful. I hate that I have ADHD, but you know what? You just gotta push through. But back in 2021 was when I was diagnosed and I was put on medication, specifically Adderall, to be able to treat my ADHD. Now, after a few months of taking Adderall, I decided that I wanted to get off of it, and it was truly one of the worst experiences of my life. Oh my gosh, getting off of that medication was horrible. And in the aftermath of getting off of that medication, my body was just grasping for any stimulant that I could find that would be able to help me with my focus, my concentration, my work productivity, because that's really the area of my life that I was struggling with the most. In 2021, I was struggling with severe burnout from launching my skincare brand while simultaneously trying to manage my YouTube channel. I had previously been working like 20 hours a day, pulling like 3 all-nighters a week sometimes. I was in the depths of burnout, so I really was trying to find anything that could work to be able to help with my focus and concentration when it came to work. And when you combine that burnout with severe ADHD, with my body coming off of a powerful stimulant like Adderall, I was desperate. And that's really when I realized, oh, nicotine is great at being able to help me stay awake, stay focused, stay concentrated, stay energized. And I'm sure anyone with ADHD who is watching can relate. Your body is completely dopamine deficient. It is so hard to be able to get the focus and concentration on anything. But nicotine is actually kind of like an ADHDer's vice, because it really helps to fill that void of dopamine to be able to create that energy that you need to concentrate and focus. And at that time of my life, I was like,
look, literally nothing else is working. I am panicked trying to get out of this burnout, trying to focus. I don't want to get back on prescription medication. Boom, this is the next best thing. And from then on, I just got more and more and more addicted. It was kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because either I was addicted to this battery and could focus on work, or I would try to quit and not be able to get any work done at all. Ugh, yeah, it was not pretty. But anyway, my addiction got so severe that over time I noticed that whenever I would try to just take a short break from vaping or try to reduce the amount that I was vaping every single day, or especially the times I would try to quit, I would get so sleepy, so out of it. My anxiety would shoot through the roof if I didn't have it in my pocket at all times. And yeah, over time I slowly started to notice like, uh-oh, this is not a fun party thing anymore. This is actually becoming like a problem. But I just didn't know how to quit, because every single time I would look up TikTok videos or YouTube videos on how to quit, it would just be this very bland, vanilla advice of people just saying, try not to think about it. You don't need it. Try snacking on candy instead. And I was like, this is not going to help my ADHD. I literally cannot work, focus, or concentrate if I'm not using this 24/7. And I feel like where I really started to notice that it was getting bad is when I would be hanging out with my friends who vape, and they would even remark like, wow, Hiram, you're really hitting that thing. So embarrassing. Oh my God. Yeah, there were some moments, especially when I was feeling like super anxious, that I would just be ripping it nonstop. There would be more nicotine vapor in my lungs than actual oxygen. That's how bad it would get. But also, oh God, and this is like really embarrassing, but you know what? I'm being vulnerable. This is the reality, folks. I would constantly be taking bathroom breaks and just hitting that vape nonstop in the bathroom. Oh my gosh, flights were the worst. When I would have to take like a 12-hour flight, I would literally be like tremoring, just like tweaked out, so restless. And I tried multiple times to quit. It even got to the point that I decided to make a vlog documenting my journey of quitting vaping that I inevitably gave up on because I relapsed. It was that bad. It was the first thing I would do when I woke up in the morning. I would find myself falling asleep with my vape in my hand. Yeah, I was hooked. And there was even one time where I did manage to quit for like 2 months, I believe. But like I've highlighted before, normal people quitting vaping is very different from people with ADHD quitting vaping, because with ADHD, you are dopamine deficient. Our brains naturally crave a stimulant in a way that just your normal average brain does not. And I remember getting to the 2-month mark and being like, I still can't concentrate on work. I'm still struggling with such extreme brain fog. I cannot focus on anything. I'm just gonna go back. And so yeah, I have tried to quit many times, but I would not be making this YouTube video if I did not manage to quit. And I want to talk about how I was able to do that, and specifically the moment where I realized I needed to cut this out of my life. If you're someone who's struggling with a vaping addiction, I please ask that you watch the end of the video, because I have so many tips and tricks and advice and mindsets that have really helped me in a way that so many videos online were just never able to help. And because I want to show you that it truly is so worth it to quit vaping. I am so happy that I am past that period of my life. And while I'm by no means at like a perfect place, it is now so nice to have my life no longer revolve around a little blinking flavored air battery. And that can be you too. So definitely watch to the end. So over the past 4 years, I never once vaped thinking that like, this is good for me or I should keep doing this. I knew it was something that I shouldn't be doing, but when I tried quitting, what I really lacked was that singular reason for why I should quit. And I know vaping addiction is very different from, you know, like more hardcore addictions. I'm not trying to say my advice is on like the same level as AA, but it was the difference between wanting to quit versus needing to quit. And I finally got that reason to need to quit. I'll be 100% honest. The reason I quit vaping is because of the intense anxiety and derealization I was experiencing. Over the years of vaping, I noticed that my anxiety was starting to get worse and worse and worse. And it would be triggered by moments where I was away from my vape or, you know, not vaping for an hour or two. Over the past 4 years, I started noticing moments where my anxiety would get so intense that it would switch over into derealization. And derealization makes anxiety look like a walk in the park. Oh my gosh, it is so scary. And it's really hard to describe exactly what it feels like. But to put it simply, in moments where I was triggered into derealization, it felt like nothing was real. Like life wasn't real. What was happening around me wasn't real. I almost felt like disconnected from my body, and like everything I was watching was a simulation. And it's genuinely like terrifying, and paired with anxiety, it would just make it 100 times worse until I would have like a really intense anxiety attack and would need to completely withdraw from people in order to self-soothe and calm myself down. Sometimes it would get so bad that it would start to trigger paranoia. And again, I wasn't aware of all this. I thought this was just anxiety until I started unpacking it with my therapist, and I was like, this is what my anxiety feels like. And she was like, that's paranoia. I was like, oh, got it. Love it. Yeah, the anxiety attacks would get so bad that I would just be terrified of like everything around me. And I noticed that this would start to happen more and more and more, and I couldn't pinpoint the reason why. So my therapist recommended that I just started tracking every single time I had one of these experiences and what led up to it, so I could identify what the potential triggers were. And wouldn't you know it, every single time it was during a period where I had to stop vaping for a few hours, or be away from my vape, or even not have my vape in my pocket. Even though the circumstances were different, the people around me was different, what I was doing was different, the one common factor was my vape. And I've now realized that the reason this was happening is because my body was craving the nicotine and the stimulant and dopamine hits. And whenever my body would sense that it did not have that anymore, it was sending signals to my brain that something is wrong, something is wrong. Instead of me thinking, oh, something's wrong with my body, I was instead thinking something's wrong with my environment, something's wrong with me or the way that I'm acting, let me start freaking out. And it was only once I identified this and realized, oh my gosh, vaping is kind of starting to ruin my life because I'm becoming terrified of interacting with people, of having these anxiety attacks. I'm withdrawing from more and more people. Maybe it's the time to quit. And finally, that was the moment where I realized I really need to quit. I don't want to experience this anymore. I'm actually kind of scared of vaping. But I will say quitting was only effective once I made this connection. I wasn't motivated to quit because I knew I should do it or because it's bad for my body. It had to get bad enough to the point that I was scared to continue. And then honestly, guys, the other reason that really was my motivation to quit was just the embarrassment of me getting on here, preaching so much about taking care of your skin and skin health and being super picky with my standards, and vaping. The juxtaposition is hypocritical, honestly. And it was something I felt so guilty about. And I was constantly in my head about like, Hiram, what if you were to meet a subscriber and you're just like hitting the vape nonstop? Like, that is not sending the message that you want to be sending. That is not in the spirit of skincare that you're constantly posting online about. And I understand, I've managed to over time have more sympathy for myself because I wasn't doing vaping for fun. I was utilizing it as a way to be able to help with my ADHD and focus on work and feel like a normal person. But yeah, that guilt just like ate away at me nonstop. And I found my self-esteem and just self-worth really being damaged by the constant onslaught of negative thoughts, bullying myself for having a skincare YouTube channel and simultaneously vaping. And I just want to apologize to you guys about that. Even though I'm trying to treat myself more kindly, it is something that I've just felt so guilty and icky about because I feel like it just does not represent what I stand for or the type of messaging that I have on my channel. I just still feel really bad about it. And so yeah, I just wanted to issue an apology to you guys for that. But that was also a huge factor into why I just really, really wanted to quit and felt the need to. So enough with the reasons why. How did I quit and how can you quit too? I have tried damn near every single method in the book, right? I've tried going cold turkey. I was on an antidepressant that's a smoking cessation aid, Wellbutrin, and that still wasn't enough. I tried the blowing necklaces, the gum, the mints, everything. But here's your actual tried and true formula of how you can quit in a sustainable way. Number one, tell people you're going to quit. This was really helpful for me as someone who had kept my vaping problem hidden from a lot of people in my life. One of the best things I did was utilize my people-pleasing tendencies and tell people I was going to quit so that I would be too embarrassed if I relapsed again. And I think this is definitely necessary if you are going to be quitting. You gotta tell people people so that you can either one, hold yourself accountable, or two, be able to rely on them for support and help when you need it. Number two, quit when you're sick. I'm sorry if you're someone who managed to just quit cold turkey and just decide to like not pick it up anymore. Good for you. That never worked for me. After like, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour after deciding to quit, I would start getting so much anxiety and start feeling so shitty that I would inevitably find myself re-picking back up the vape. However, when I got sick and I would have like a cough and a sore throat and I physically would not be able to vape anymore because of how much it would hurt my throat, that was the way that I was able to get through the first 48 to 72 hours of quitting. In my opinion, that initial quitting period is so difficult because it's so easy to just go out and buy a new vape and just cave to that intense bodily need for the stimulant and dopamine hit. But if I was sick in bed, my throat not able to handle any of the vapor, and I'd be able to sleep for that first 48 to 72 hour period, that gets you through the most difficult part. Well, kind of. I actually wouldn't say the first 3 days are the most difficult part of quitting, but it's definitely not easy to push through that first period, but it's a lot easier to do if your body physically cannot handle any vapor. If you're someone who has the self-control to not pick up your vape or not buy a new vape, good for you. But for me and for a lot of other people I've seen comment and share their story online, this is kind of the best time to be able to quit to ensure that you physically cannot continue vaping. So yeah, start sharing your drinks and your utensils with other people and you'll get sick in no time. But I will say this only works for that initial period of when you're sick, because the moment I got better, all the times I tried to quit when I was sick, I would just find myself repurchasing a vape and falling right back into the habit. So you have to have a plan for after you get better. Now, here's where I'm just going to be really brutally honest, specifically for all my fellow ADHDers out there. The hardest part of quitting vaping is not the first 72 hours. It's not even the first week or month. It is the brain fog. That is what pushed me to relapse over and over and over again. Trying to rewire your brain after a long-term vaping addiction is so difficult when you have ADHD, because that crutch that you've been using to help you be productive, to help you focus, is completely gone. And your body's not going to be able to readjust in a short period of time. But you also just can't completely check out of life and quit working or quit your responsibilities, right? I started using nicotine pouches. And if you don't know what nicotine pouches are, or Zyn is the most popular brand, it's a little pouch of like nicotine and powder that you place in between your gums and the inside of your cheek that delivers nicotine directly into your system and kind of works similarly to like a nicotine patch or gum, but nicotine patches and gum didn't really work for me. I replaced my vaping with nicotine pouches. Now I want to make it very clear, this is only something that I'm sharing my experience with for anyone out there who has tried to quit vaping. If you're someone who has never tried nicotine, you've never had a nicotine problem, please do not use nicotine pouches. Do not try Zyns. That is only a recipe for disaster, because you can get addicted to Zyns. They still have nicotine. It's an addictive chemical. And even though nicotine pouches are significantly less damaging to the body than vaping, it's still not something you want to be hooked on. The reason I developed a plan to make the switch is that it's much easier to keep track of how many nicotine pouches you're using every single day than how many times you're hitting your vape every single day. My vape addiction was so bad that I was hitting it hundreds of times every single day. There was no way I was going to be able to count that and over time try to lower the dose. It just was not possible. However, it's much easier with a nicotine pouch to keep track of how many you're using every single day and lower that amount over time. And that's what I did. I initially started using nicotine pouches whenever that severe brain fog would start to hit, whenever I would get really restless or shaky, start to experience the withdrawal side effects of nicotine. And I kept a journal where I was able to track exactly how many pouches I was using every single day. And then over time, I started lowering the amount until I started only using it for the moments where I needed to really focus on work, where I needed to be productive, and then lowering it from there. The reason why this worked so well for me is that it was able to slowly train my brain to operate independently from nicotine and and slowly get out of that brain fog without completely leaving me high and dry with no ability to focus and concentrate when I really, really needed it. Again, I want to say this is just what has worked for me. I am so not recommending nicotine pouches or any type of nicotine if you're someone who hasn't struggled with vaping or nicotine addiction before. This is just what has really worked for me, but I will say this is the only thing that was effective after trying so many different methods of quitting, because as someone with ADHD, quitting cold turkey is literally debilitating to your life. Now, while this is great for helping to lower the nicotine dependence in your body, one of the things that makes vaping so addictive is that like hand to mouth motion, that oral fixation, the kinesthetic experience of having something in your hand and that motion. Honestly, it's so weird how that in and of itself can be so addictive, but a lot of people have shared that that's one of the hardest things for them to get rid of was not necessarily the nicotine dependence, but more so the oral and hand fixation. And let me introduce you to the only thing that worked for me, Yadom.
Yadom.
If you don't know what this is, it's a nasal inhaler specifically from Thailand. Essentially what it is a little stick that has like menthol, peppermint, and a blend of really potent fragrances that you use in your nostrils that gives you kind of like almost a head rush. A lot of people use this when they're sick, but when I tell you this is the only thing that managed to mimic that sensation of having something in my hand, almost like that oral fixation, or having something near my mouth that would give me a head rush that is most similar to vaping, I'm not joking. This is the only thing that has worked. The reason why I like this so much is that it's a great grounding technique for if you start to struggle with anxiety from not having a vape nearby. That was one of my biggest concerns. When I didn't have my vape, my anxiety would start to spike. And really common grounding techniques for anxiety are like find 5 things that are red, count 5 different things that are blue, or grab some ice, splash yourself with cold water. But a lot of these things were really difficult for me to do if I was like out and about having a conversation with someone, whatever it may be. But this was so easy to be able to just whip out, take a whiff, feel that head rush, and it almost in its own way is a grounding technique for anxiety and has been a lifesaver for me. If I find these online, I'll have them linked in my description box down below for you guys to check out. But yeah, when I say this is so life-saving but so simple, I'm not joking. It's so helpful to just give you that similar head rush feeling. Oh, I forgot to mention a really good trick. This was actually so helpful in making me feel repulsed to an actual vape. I kept one of my dead vapes, and the reason why I did this is that if I felt like I was going stir crazy, I needed to get a hit of the vape, I would take a hit of my dead vape. Nope, it's not healthy for you. It's definitely not good for your lungs, but hey, we're coming off of a vape addiction. We'll live. And when I would take a hit of that burnt coil, nasty flavored vapor, it would make me like physically gag or cough or make my throat burn so much that I would just be like, oh, okay, I do not want to take another hit of this vape. And over time, I found myself reaching for the vape less and less because I was becoming just like physically repulsed to the flavor and just did not want to feel like I was, breathing in vapor. I know it sounds really stupid and it's definitely like not the healthiest option, but it really was helpful for me in making sure that like, even though I have a vape nearby that I can use, I physically don't want it. Like I'm disgusted and repulsed by it. And it really did help in my journey. And the final trick that worked for me is coffee. Caffeine is a great stimulant, specifically if you have ADHD, to help harness your concentration and focus. And I'll be honest, even though I'm not trying to encourage replacing one addiction with another, after I quit, I really just upped my coffee intake much more than what I was having before. And over time, I've been able to like bring it back down. But in that like initial 2 to 3 weeks after I quit, I was drinking like 6 espresso shots a day. Like I was just boom, 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 constantly having caffeine in order to try and get as close to a stimulant effect that nicotine provided, but it definitely is helpful. Now, these are the tangible tricks that I implemented, and I want to talk about the mindset and lifestyle changes that I made because I think they're equally as important in order to make sure that I and you don't relapse. I hate to admit it, you guys, because I was so resistant against this. I really didn't want to believe that the people who said exercise helps were actually right, but I've got to be honest. Exercise really helped, not necessarily for curbing the cravings like I thought it would, but more so for reducing my overall anxiety that led to me reaching for my vape. My vape was basically like a safety blanket whenever I was feeling a lot of anxiety, and removing that safety blanket from my life definitely increased my anxiety initially, and the best thing that was able to help with that was exercise. And a really helpful thing that I did in order to help me in moments where I was feeling that anxiety rise was install a pull-up bar in my house, so that whenever I, started to feel like on edge, I would just go and do like 10 or 15, 20 pull-ups, and I would immediately feel better afterwards, because exercise does help to release those chemicals that either help you feel good or simulate what your body is deficient in if you have ADHD. So if you're someone who is quitting and hasn't gotten on an exercise routine, I would say that make quitting vaping your motivation to start exercising, because it does work. Sincerely, someone who has always hated exercise. But also another thing that I did, and definitely something I recommend if you don't want to go the exercise route, get up and moving. If you're starting to feel those cravings, if you're starting to feel anxiety, or you're starting to feel shaky, get up, start cleaning the house, make your bed, clean your bathroom, go on a walk, go run some errands, just do something to get you up and moving, because I guarantee that if you start doing another task, it will take your mind off of focusing on the vape or trying not to vape. And yeah, just occupy your mind with something else. A mindset that was really critical for me was the streak mindset. Like when you think of when you have a Snapchat streak, or I was going to say a Duolingo streak, but they're canceled now that they use AI. When I have a streak going, I almost have like a panicked relationship to it to not break my streak. That is why I have like 900 day streaks on Snapchat. Still, as a 29-year-old. Yeah, I know, it's embarrassing, whatever. Basically, I would use that mindset. So whenever I felt like, oh, I really want to hit my vape, or if I was like, oh, I really think it's time to use another nicotine pouch, I would think to myself, I've been going good for a while, let me give it another 15 minutes, or let me give it another 30 minutes. Pushing off that fix really helps, because I almost guarantee that in another 15 minutes, your brain or body is probably going to be occupied with something else, and you're going to forget, and then before you know it, it's going to be another hour that's passed by. Obviously, this only works in conjunction with all of the other tips that I've recommended, but it really did help me in moments where I'm just like, I need a hit. That streak mindset helps to keep your however many minutes, hours, or days streak going. And then finally, try to reframe your relationship with vaping. Now, reframe is a very therapy speak term. And I will say as well, if you're someone who isn't in therapy and you have the option to go to therapy, I would highly recommend utilizing a therapist as a way to aid you in your journey of quitting. Because not gonna lie, if it wasn't for my therapist helping me to make the connection between my anxiety derealization and vaping, I don't know if I would have been able to quit. But the big thing that was so helpful for me was to reframe my relationship to vaping. Instead of seeing it as something that soothed my anxiety, I instead shifted that to make the mental connection that, oh, my vape is causing my anxiety. It's the reason I've been having derealization and these anxiety attacks and paranoia. All of that started because I was vaping. Changing that mental connection made such a huge difference for me, because you'll no longer start thinking of your vape as the thing that's going to solve your problems, and instead realize that so many of your problems have started because of vaping in the first place. That, at the end of the day, was the biggest motivator for me, because making a vlog documenting my quitting process didn't work. Getting on medication didn't work. All these knickknacks that you can buy didn't work. The biggest thing that made a difference was changing my relationship to vaping fundamentally, and I definitely recommend you do that as well. I guarantee if you quit vaping, your life is going to become so much better. And I know it's really annoying to hear that, and it's not something you maybe necessarily want to do right now, and that's totally fine. Everyone's on their own journey. But in the long run, it is so worth it. And I'm so glad that I can just set it to the side, no longer have my life revolve around it, and get rid of all the symptoms that were negatively impacting my life in so many ways, and no longer have to think about it 24/7. I think that's the best thing. Just no longer having to stress about it is so amazing. And yeah, but at the end of the day, if my journey and my experience and my tricks that I use to help me quit can help other people, then then that's all that matters. And I don't give a fuck if I am embarrassed, because if I'm helping other people, that's the most important thing. If this has managed to help any of you guys, let me know in the comment section down below. If you guys have managed to quit vaping, please be a resource to anyone in the comment section that is currently struggling with it, because I guarantee they can definitely use your help right now. And yeah, I just really appreciate you guys, and I hope this was able to help. Love you guys.